Please note this video is meant to be a reference only and not a detailed instructional video. There are a large amount of details that you will not see in this video that should be described to you by an instructor. Escapes require a lot of timing, details, patience, and more. Also be aware that these escapes work for specific situations. Not all escapes fit all scenarios. Having a good arsenal is very important. Part 2 of this series shows reverse scarf hold escapes, north-south escapes, and knee on belly escapes. I hope you enjoy. If your opponent doesn't give a lot of pressure on your arm, you may be able to bump into him and drop your elbow so you can get your forearm next to his hip and push his hip and get your knee through, so then that way you can re-guard. Sometimes you may also be able to bump into him and create a little bit of space, so in that way you can drop your inside elbow, push on his hip with your forearm, and re-guard from there. Also, by doing hard shoulder walks backwards, you can create space on your opponent and then put your hand on the back of his tricep, so in that way you can do the stiff arm scooting escape, pull your legs out, and then you can get in front of them and possibly get your guard back and get out from the reverse scarf hold position. An escape that I do a lot when I'm caught in the reverse scarf hold position is I actually turn into my opponent and then I belly down. What happens is lots of times my opponent feels that my back is exposed and then they will work to take my back. As soon as they do this, I cut back in and it gives me the opportunity for me to get my guard and escape from being put in this pretty tough position. Now, if you notice that your opponent's near side leg is close to you, you may have the ability to step your leg over, hook his leg, drag it in, and then you slide your bottom leg underneath his leg, which gives you the opportunity to scoot your body out, and then not only just scoot your body out, but you can possibly attack their back. So I reach over, I scoot his leg through, get my leg underneath, scoot my body out, and when I scoot my body out and underneath, I then exposes his back, and then I can actually attack his back and possibly get my position from there. A tricky escape from north-south position is when you get your body out. What I like to do is I like to bounce my body out, so then that way my chest is exposed, and then I roll backwards and I roll over my opponent's back and I actually take their back from there. You could do this when your opponent has his arms over your arms. You could also do this when your opponent has his arms under your arms as well. As long as you get enough space outward and you get a good forward roll over one of your shoulders, you have the ability to attack their back and get on top. Another escape from north-south when your opponent has both of his arms over your arms is you scoot your body out just like all the other techniques. You straighten your arms and all you do is a log roll right underneath them, and when you do this it forces you to get to your stomach. Your opponent may have trouble holding you, and then from there you have to work your escapes from the turtle position, but you're not caught in the north-south position, which could be a very tough position for many people. So I scoot out, I straighten my arms, and I do a log roll, so in that way I can get out of the north-south position. Now for the grapplers who have very good timing and who are a bit more powerful and maybe even bigger, you have the ability to turn your opponent over from being underneath the north-south position. What I do is I block one of his arms by cutting my arm down, and my other arm shoots up, and as I do this I turn hard and try to shoot my hips up, so in that way I can roll him over. So if you see, I get my body out, I chop one arm down to block his arm, and the other arm shoots up into his armpit, so in that way I can roll him over. Now when your opponent has both of his arms underneath you, lots of times you have different options. With this particular escape, my opponent has both of his arms underneath me. I scoot my body out just like the other ones. I push up underneath his neck, and then I get my shins underneath his arms, so in that way I can create space and spin underneath. So if you watch again, I'm getting my body out, I get my hands underneath his neck, and when I get my hands underneath his neck, I push up hard, which lifts him up and create space. As soon as his shoulders go up, I put my shins underneath his shoulders, push up, and then I spin underneath, so then that way I can get my guard. Another escape when he has both of his arms underneath your arms is scoot your body out and then you put both of your arms on one side of his head. When you put both your arms on one side of his head, you then can roll out that direction. So if you watch from this angle, I scoot out, I put both of my arms on one side of his head. One arm is closer to his neck and the other arm is closer to his arm, and then I quickly roll away from him, so in that way I can get to the side on top. From here, I block my opponent's arm with my one arm and I wrap my other arm around his neck, so then that way it's hard for him to also post out and I can turn him over. This movement is good for people who have really good timing and also for those who have a decent amount of power within their movements, and especially good for people who are a little bit bigger. A more common situation is when your opponent has one arm under and one arm over. I could still do the rollback. I could do it from pretty much every position, but sometimes you can't go directly over their back. Lots of times you have the ability more so to go to the side. So if you watch from here, I scoot my body out and then I roll back, but I roll more to his side. So in that way I end up in like a side guard type position where I can either attack from the guard from here, or I can even possibly attack my opponent's back as well. A very common escape from the north-south position is when you swing your legs from side to side and then shoot your body around. Now when I do this, I like to take the arm that is in front of my opponent's shoulder and I stick my hand underneath his head and underneath his face, and then I shoot it down, so in that way I can create some space and make it a little bit more uncomfortable for my opponent as well. So you see I stick my arm underneath his face, and then as I roll, I shoot my arm down, and when I shoot my arm down, it helps me get to the turtle position and also helps me get out, and it distracts him as well and makes it easier for me to escape. Now, a very tricky north-south escape is when your opponent has one arm under and one arm over. I overhook the arm that's over my arm and I walk to side control. Then I wrap my arm around his head, and then from there I quickly come back and I start bridging into him. When I do this, what it does is it traps my opponent's arm, and then it gives me the ability to not only escape, it also gives me the ability to get on top. So I trap his arm, hug his arm and his head, turn back into him, and then I bridge and turn him over. By lacing your inside arm underneath your opponent's ankle and then back up and cupping inside their thigh and pushing your other hand on their hip as you walk out, you not only escape the knee on belly, but it also gives you the chance to turn your opponent over and get on top. It's very good to be able to escape positions, and not only escape positions, but improve your position as well. Another more common and simple way of escaping the knee on belly is by grabbing your opponent's pants, making sure that he can't underhook your elbow, and then shrimping away, keeping their knee in place, shrimping away, and then coming back and establishing your guard. You also have the ability to shrimp away and then get to your knees, so in that way you can attack your opponent and possibly go for takedowns or even re-guard from there. So if you watch, what I do is I grab my opponent's pants, making sure my elbow is still tight. I shrimp away, keeping his knee in place. The goal is to be able to keep him from following you. Then you get space, get to your knees, and then go around and attack. Another simple way to escape the knee on belly is by pushing your hips up, and then while you come back down, pushing his ankle in between your legs, so in that way you can get the half guard position. So what I do is I bridge my hips up, create some space, but while I'm on my way back down, I'm pushing his leg in between my legs, so in that way I can escape the knee on belly position and get the half guard position. A knee on belly escape that catches your opponent off guard is when he has his hand deep on your collar behind your head. You can attack his arm like you're going for an arm crush position, and when you do this, drop your elbows in tight, roll outwards, so in that way you can roll your opponent over. What happens is your opponent's arm gets stuck and they feel like the way that they can relieve the pressure is by rolling with you, because if they don't roll with you, they may get their arm locked up. When it's hard for you to shrimp away and you may not have the ability to turn into your opponent, sometimes your best option is to turn away. So what I do is I get my elbow in front of his knee, I roll through, I get my arm out so he can't spin to my back, and then I'll sit to the guard. So if you watch from here, what I do is I spin away, I get my elbow in front, and I want to try to keep as much distance as I can so it's hard for him to follow me, and also make sure I block his hips so in that way I can establish my better position, sit the guard, and get out. A very tricky knee on belly escape that gets you to the 50-50 position is by reaching underneath your opponent's leg, by reaching your arm across, spinning under, shooting your legs up, and then you roll all the way through and you wrap your leg around so you end up in the 50-50. So here I reach under, I push his leg over my head, push him past me, and when I push him past me, I then wrap my leg around, keep spinning, so then that way I can get the 50-50. Another variation of this is when you lace your arm underneath his ankle and through his leg, and then you roll through, and by doing this, you actually end up in a knee bar position. So what I do is I lace my hand underneath, wrap it through his thigh, and then I roll underneath, I spin underneath, push his leg over me, and then I shoot my legs up so I can get a knee bar. When your opponent has the knee on belly but has his weight a little bit over you, you may have the ability to actually roll him over by grabbing his far side collar, grabbing by his knee of the leg that's posted out, pulling his collar, and basically you want to turn him. So I'm rotating his whole body and his leg over my body, pulling his collar down, pushing his legs past, so in that way I can not only escape but I can reverse the position. Similar to the leg lace escape, instead of lacing their leg, what you do is you reach underneath their ankle, reach all the way up and grab their belt, their gi, or their pants, put your other hand on their body, and then you walk out so you can tip them down. So you see, I reach under, I grab his gi this time, and then I start walking my body out, push him with my hand, so in that way I can tip him over and escape the knee on belly. For those who like to play spider guard, who have longer legs, if you can break his grip off of your gi, get control of their sleeve, put your foot inside the crook of their elbow, you then have the ability to straighten your leg, reach underneath their other leg that's posted out, and then sweep them to the side. So if you watch, I break his grip off, I put my foot right into his elbow, hook underneath his leg, extend my leg, and then tip him over off the knee on belly. Another escape, especially when your opponent's rear is a little bit higher, is by taking your knee, pushing it into their butt, making them go forward, and then quickly coming out and attacking for a single leg. One thing that you should notice, especially from this angle coming up, is that when I do this, I'm blocking his knee with my hand. So I'm blocking his posted knee with my hand to make it hard for him to step up. If he steps up, this is a little bit harder, but when I stop him, I can do this successfully. And also if I take my outside arm and I reach over his calf of the leg that has the knee on belly, and then I hook his leg and grab inside the pants of his posted leg, and then from there I do a reverse shrimp and I start walking into them, I have the ability to cut his legs out from underneath him, lift him up, make him lighter so that way I can turn him over. So if you watch, I reach inside. When I reach inside, I wrap his leg, grab inside his posted leg, start walking into him, shoot my hips in, so in that way I can escape the knee on belly and get on top. Thank you for watching. Please be sure to see the other parts of this series. Stay tuned at www.grapplersguide.com or www.grapplingescapes.com.